Hey everybody, I'm Shane, founder of Evervault, and today I'm going to show you how you can use Evervault to streamline PCI DSS compliance. PCI DSS is a standard for anybody handling credit card data on the internet, and it requires a bunch of technical controls to comply with, as well as a very expensive and difficult audit. Using Evervault, you can reduce your scope significantly, and it reduces the investment, which is typically something like $100,000 in 6 months, to a couple of days of engineering time and a much more streamlined audit. You'll see here that I've spun up a sample Node.js application in Replit, which is an online IDE that makes it really easy to get up and running with sample code. And we've used Evervault inputs to create a credit card form, which encrypts credit card data before it ever leaves your client's device. That's really important because it means that your infrastructure is now removed from scope for any of the technical controls in PCI, and it means that your customers are never handling you sensitive data in plaintext. The big challenges arise though when you want to use something like a payment processor, in this case Stripe, which needs to receive your credit card data in plaintext to be able to initiate a transaction or create a payment method for a customer. So you'll see here that that's what we're doing. We're creating a new payment method, we're attaching it to a customer, but in this case, the credit card number is being received by the server encrypted at all times, which isn't much use for the Stripe API. So if you see here, if we paste in our credit card details and click submit, the request goes through, but our server is receiving the sensitive data encrypted. So I'm going to show you how you can integrate the Evervault SDK server side to automatically decrypt the credit card data before it reaches the Stripe API, and we'll be able to create the customer then. So I'm going to include the Evervault Node.js SDK, which is just like any other SDK that you might be familiar with from other developer tools. And then I'm going to initialize it using an API key for an application that I've just created in Evervault. So we'll go in, copy the API key, and then make sure it's added as an environment variable. And then initialize the SDK using that environment variable that we just created. I'm also going to tell it that any requests going to the Stripe API need to have the sensitive data decrypted, which is pretty straightforward using the Node.js SDK. We just pass in a list of domain names to which credit card data should be decrypted. In this case, api.stripe.com. Now, once I launch the application itself, once this boots up, I'll be able to run through the form again. Nothing changes for the end user. But by the time we actually submit the request to our server, you'll still see that the data is encrypted, but the customer was successfully created in the Stripe dashboard. So if I go in here and refresh, I'll be able to see that the customer has been created, their credit card data has been sent successfully, and Stripe received the credit card data in plain text. We'll be able to go in again and see in the Evervault dashboard, all the requests have gone through. We'll see the most recent request we sent to create the payment method contains 2 encrypted strings, which we automatically decrypted before it got sent to the Stripe API. You'll see all the logs for any requests are going to Stripe in here, which makes it much easier for things like audit logging and just understanding what your infrastructure is doing. With this setup using Evervault inputs and outbound relay, it reduces your PCI scope to some very, very simple compliance requirements, which you can see here on the page in front of me. There's 7 requirements that you have to go through, which is a lot less than the 300 that you would normally have to go through if you weren't using a service like Evervault, a lot of which you're probably already doing. So this is things like patching your web servers, enforcing complex passwords, and then deleting stale data for expired credit cards or credit card data that you're just not using anymore. So it's super straightforward, and then we provide you with a policy and procedure bundle that you can then customize and pass on to your auditor so you can get up and running with Evervault and PCI compliance in just a few days. Thank you.